All right, everybody. This is my unboxing and setup video of this Phrozen Sonic Mini 8KS. I was fortunate enough to be asked by Phrozen if I would review this video of their new printer that is upcoming. Pre-orders are going to start May 17th. They have announced the price of it. Retail price is $349.99 US. That is awesome price compared to their Sonic Mini 8K, which is a great printer. I have a couple of them, and I absolutely love them for what I do. I print a lot of miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons, and the kids and I play. The kids kind of got me into playing, and I have fallen down the rabbit hole of 3D printing and painting now. But the Mini 8KS has been a fantastic printer. So when they asked me to do this review of the new 8KS, I quickly obliged. I was excited to get this and compare it to the Mini 8K. So when you get a printer from Phrozen, it comes in this nice little box, looks real fancy, and I've noticed that they package them very, very well. My Mini 8Ks came in just like this, where the printer itself is tightly wrapped up and encased in the foam. Uh, it's a very, very solid shipping container. So I can see that the Mini 8KS, once again, just like the Mini 8Ks, has come packaged appropriately and just the same. So looking at this printer now, obviously we can see that there is a light green, almost neon fluorescent green lid on it, which is a pretty cool color. I question the amount of UV protection it provides. I would definitely say to keep this still away from UV light if you can. Don't count on the cover to give you any UV protection. It probably does offer some UV protection, but I would still keep it in a shaded area away from any UV natural ambient light sources like the sun. So let's go ahead and open this thing up, try to get all the plastic off of it. Let's see what we've got. So far it looks just like the Mini 8K. The build plate looks to be the same size, basic same construction. It's obviously packaged just like the Mini 8K was. I like how they put all the foam in there. They tighten the build plate down to the accessory box. It keeps everything nice, neat, and tightly packaged, so nothing gets bumped around. They also obviously wrap the lid to the base. You can see the build plate. It's like I said, it's all designed just like the Mini 8K was. So it looks very, very familiar to me. I do see that there is a single linear rail versus the dual linear rails that the Sonic Mini 8K has. So we're going to open this thing up and we're going to look a little more closely at the rail and some of the the accessories, the build plate, and some of the nits, little pieces to this printer. We'll carefully cut around here, see if I can get this plastic off nice and carefully. So I'm really been excited about this printer through my testing. It's been a fantastic printer. In this video, I'm just basically going to show you the unboxing and the basic setup to the printer. We'll talk about it near the end of the video. I'll show you some of my testing pictures and talk about what I have seen in this printer in actual prints versus the Mini 8K. There we go. We have found the start of the wrap, so now it's just easy to unwrap this and get all this plastic off to expose the good stuff inside. So there's been a few other, there's obviously other people that are out there testing it. There's a few videos out there that show other reviews from these users as well. I recommend you taking a look at those. Fohammer is one, Denny Swang is one, and Maria Zernedin, she's also done some testing. She has posts on her website. I recommend checking those out. So what I just pointed out were these big screws on the top of the Z-axis. Those are bigger, much bigger than the Mini 8K. Looks like the plate's the same. It's got the laser etched little kind of cubes, lasers etched into the plate, which is just like the Mini 8K. It's a very solid build construction. The leveling appears to be the same. I'd almost believe that this could be swapped out for the Mini 8K plate with no issues whatsoever. So all this looks just very similar to the Mini 8K. It's got the main screw on the top to secure the build plate to the arm. These little ridges right here are different from the Mini 8K. I don't suspect there's anything other than just a stylized look to those. It does give you something to hold on to, but that main edge right there is enough to hold on to as the Mini 8K had. So let's see what's in the accessory box. Inside the box, we're going to open it up. So they give you their warranty and after sale service card with some little QR codes to get you that information. And wow, look at that, a free model from Pixup. So Pixup is Phrozen's site for models. They do come pre-sliced, so you can start printing right away, and you don't have to get a slicer program to start printing, which was not included in the Mini 8K. This site was not around for that. So that's very exciting for anybody new that is ready to print. What we also have is a little packet here that has some sanding paper. I would assume that's to scuff up the build plate after it wears down in time. And we have the Allen wrenches for disassembly and any maintenance that's required. Now, what's different is that these are the same wrenches included in the Mini 8K. What they don't include is a larger wrench to disassemble the top of that Z-axis. Here you can see for your bed leveling, you're going to use a number 3, the big one. For your vat, you're going to use all 3 sizes to replace your FEP film when the time comes. The FEP film does wear down over time, so you will have to replace that periodically as you go through printing. So this is a good thing that Phrozen includes with their printers. Makes it really easy, kind of an all-in-one package. You can start printing, you can maintain your printer right away. But like I said, these screws up here, they do not have a wrench for those. So I suspect that they don't want you taking it apart and disassembling that, which I will talk about. You might need to do that. Here's the AC adapter. This is a much smaller setup than the Mini 8K. The Mini 8K has a power brick and a 3-prong power connector for the US versions. The power brick is kind of like a laptop brick. At least it's the same kind of brick that my laptop uses. This one doesn't. It just plugs straight into the wall and has the other end that plugs into the back of the printer. The cable line does look to be shorter, so make sure you have an outlet nearby to your printer, which, that should go without saying. You're not going to want to be too far away from a power source. But this is a neat little thing. It looks kind of, I bet they saved their costs there with the AC adapter. So good for them for kind of cutting costs where they could and not sacrificing the build quality. Here's your plastic spatula. What's this good for? Taking up space in your trash can. I don't recommend it for scraping the FEP. I don't think it's strong enough to scrape models off of the build plate. I don't even use this. I would stay away from this thing, but it's there. So what they also have, let's keep moving forward. They've got some gloves for you, and they've got a funnel to empty the vat and retain the rest of your resin. I would recommend getting a screen to filter that resin. This is the metal scraper. This is the bee's knees for scraping your models off of the build plate. It is sharp. You just slide it up underneath your model and pop your model off of the build plate. This is a really good spatula. I use that religiously every time I remove a model off of my build plate. Here's the USB drive. This is a much more generic drive. There's no brand name on it from the one that's included in the Mini 8K, which is a SanDisk Cruiser blade. This one is very generic. I'm hoping that we actually get some longevity out of it. So we're going to see how this USB holds up over time. This does look like the same type of USB that came with my Elegoo Saturn II when I received that one. So I was really happy with the SanDisk USB that came with the Mini 8K, but I'm sure that this is one of the cost cuttings that Phrozen's done to include this USB. We'll see how it lasts over time. Once again, there's the sandpaper. Use that. It's a very rough, heavy grit paper. Looks to be an 80 grit. So I would probably use that to lightly scuff up the build plate as that smooths out over time. I have also used this to sand down some of my models, basically the bases. If any support nubs are left on the bases, I would do that. But I suspect it's actually for this build plate here to keep that scuffed up and fresh, over time. I've not had to scuff up the first build plate yet. I've probably gone through, geez Louise, 20 kilograms of resin and printing. And I've not had to use this yet. So the build plates and the etching that's on them from the factory is a fantastic etching. It holds up really, really well. All right, let's go ahead and put this back in the bag. Kind of put everything back together and get to looking at the rest of the printer. Once again, I got to say, I was really, really, really happy to find that that card from PixUp included in here. I think that's fantastic for entry-level users that aren't quite familiar with slicing software yet, which you will have to get familiar with that. There's the warranty card. That's going to give you all your warranty information, and any user manuals too are all linked up. So they save money by not printing warranty cards and service information in there. It's just all online, which is, I think, a really good thing. All right, so let's pull off this foam. Let's get to see what is underneath of it. I suspect the vat is probably going to be very similar to the Mini 8K vat, which it does look to be. In fact, it looks dead on exactly like the Mini 8K vat. Phrozen has said that the vats are interchangeable between the Mini 8KS and the Sonic Mini 8K. I can confirm that is the case. So if you have a Mini 8K, you can use that vat on the Mini 8KS. The vats come pre-tensioned, FEP installed. There is that bottom layer protective film on the underside of it. You'll just pull the little red tab there when you're ready to peel off that protective film and pour in your resin. You should be ready for printing. The screen looks to be the same as well. Okay, we have a nice aluminum vat, not plastic, but it's metal. Let's set that down. Now this plate here on the Mini 8K is an unfinished aluminum. This one seems to be a painted or anodized black aluminum. It is not plastic, it is still metal. So good on Phrozen for keeping that. It looks like everything is built very, very strongly, which is very good to see. So there's the protective tab, the little green tab. There's protective film on the LCD. That must be removed before you get to printing and set up. We're going to do that once I get the printer into the print room. And underneath, as I've come to find out, there is actually underneath of that protective film, there is still an additional what appears to be a screen protector on the screen. That is amazing. Big kudos for Phrozen for putting on this little small screen protector. It's very thin. It sits just inside of the tape on top of the screen. I had to actually end up getting a puncture in my FEP film from testing, and it spilled onto that screen protector. I was able to peel it right off. The screen's in great condition. I hope it is truly just a protective film. Further testing is going to prove whether or not that is the case. But everything looks just like the Mini 8K. Like I said, we've got this single rail axis. There is what I just pointed out was actually the home light. That's where the printer, and let's take the camera off here and we'll get a little bit closer to show you guys a close-up view of it. But that's the home light, lets the printer know where its home position is, right down there. On the Mini 8K, it is actually installed on the back of the rail. But that little tab's going to slide down there in between the little lasers, and that's going to indicate the home position to the printer. Like I said, the Mini 8K has it back here. So it's a different setup for the home laser. That tab, I hope that stands up over time. As long as you don't bump it or hit it on anything, it should be perfectly fine. I don't see any reason for that to break as long as you're using the printer appropriately. Now there's the single Z-rail axis, or single Z-rail. It is much thicker than either one of the two that are on the Mini 8K. Goes all the way up to the top, looks very stout, so I think this will be sufficient. Here's a better look at the top screws here. They are much larger, like I said, than any of the wrenches that are provided. So if you do come into removing that, you will need a different wrench. Now, if you notice here, there is a lot of lubricant from the factory on the screw. Phrozen uses a heavy lubricant from the factory to keep that screw from corroding over, while it sits in the shipping box. It's a very good lubricant for keeping corrosion off the screw while the printer waits to be shipped out and opened up for a user. However, I will say that during my usage of the Mini 8Ks, both of them, after some time of printing, ended up getting gunked up and slowing down and prohibiting the movement, lifts and retracts of the arm during printing, which resulted in failures for me. So I highly recommend you monitor the lubricant, this grease here. You will see it get black and gunked up and thick. You will notice your Z-axis having trouble lifting and retracting. At that point, you will have to disassemble, clean everything really, really well, and then apply your own lubricant. I use a thin lithium, like a white lithium grease to lube up my Z-axis, and it's worked great. So once again, back to those top bolts, you will need eventually, a bigger Allen wrench in order to remove those, to clean that, you'll remove the arm off of the rail and the screw. And you'll want to clean that screw and clean that rail really good, get all that old factory grease off and put on some new thinner grease. I think that's just going to be common maintenance for printers. Over time, your grease is going to get worn out, get gummed up. You'll have to do that every so often, I suspect. But everything else looks very similar to the way that the Mini 8K is designed. I've been very pleased with the Mini 8K printers, and this one is looking just as good. So happy to see this. Phrozen looks like they've done a fantastic job designing this unit here. The screen looks to be the exact same size, as the Mini 8K. So the touchscreen here looks to be the same as the Mini 8K as well. Obviously, the logo on the printer is a little bit different. It's just screen printed rather than having a physical logo. I'm noticing that there's no USB port on the front. There's normally a USB port right here on the Mini 8K. Let's go look on the side. Lo and behold, there it is on the side back here. So I don't know quite why they did that, but it's there. It's on the opposite side on my Saturn II. I don't see any problems with it. When you're moving around the front of the printer, maybe it stops it from getting caught up there. On the bottom, I don't see any vent holes other than on the very, very, very bottom edge there, which are in the shadow. We'll take a look at those later. The Mini 8K does have a fan and vent around the back side, and it appears that this one does not. So the internal ventilation does appear to be different on this unit. There is no fan back here. You can see where you would plug in the AC adapter and the power switch. This is where the fan is on the Mini 8K printer. That is not here on this Mini 8KS. So hopefully they do have a fan inside to keep the light source cool as it operates. But yeah, it doesn't have nowhere near the ventilation holes that the Mini 8K printer has. All right, so here we are in the printing room. Don't mind my mess. I don't have anything pretty or fancy. I'm very primitive and kind of messy. So we've got it plugged in. We're going to fire it up. And the screen, let's see here. Screen comes alive, boots up, the user interface on that screen looks just like the Mini 8K. We'll take the lid off. Yep, same user interface as the Mini 8K. Go to Tools. You've got your Z control, your LCD test, vac cleaning, and your Z calibration. So let's go ahead and look at the Z calibration. Well, first we'll run the LCD test. How about that? We're going to remove the vat. Just unscrew the screws that are right here, one on either side, and simply lift the vat out. I'll place it on one of my Mini 8Ks over here. Okay. And we're going to peel this green tab, start there, and peel off that factory protector. So you can't see it in here, but there is a very thin sheet underneath of that on the screen. I believe that is the installed screen protector from the factory. Very, very cool if that's the case. Put a piece of A4 paper as to not blind yourself and cause damage to your eyes over there. Click the screen test button and it will produce an image. There we go. The screen looks to be functioning properly. The image on the screen matches the one on the touch screen. So that's what we're looking for. All right, screen test is completed. Let's go over to the Z calibration. Follow the instructions on the screen. Remove the resin vat, place an A4 on the LCD screen, loosen the fours on the sides of the, or 4 screws on the side of the building plate, and then we will click Next as it lowers down. So I'm going to put 2 sheets of A4 on there. Now I use 2 sheets They recommend just saying one sheet in the directions. I have found that through my experience with the Mini 8K, the thickness of the FEP is more roughly equal to 2.5 to 3 sheets. On my Mini 8Ks, I started using 3 sheets of paper. When I did a single sheet, the build plate would bind at the bottom when it tried to get home, which resulted in the printer essentially locking up. So I went to 3 sheets as was suggested by other users. Okay, there you can see we've unlocked that. It moves freely, so we can go ahead and proceed with the task. Anyway, after doing 3 sheets, my build plate, we're going to hit next. My build plate on my Mini 8Ks was kind of an uneven plate, so I moved to 2. And I do the actual initial calibration with 2 sheets now, because you want a nice even tension on the paper when the build plate is at home. You don't want it loose or you're not fully seated. But you don't want it too tight either as to the build plate locking up when it gets to its home position. So as we wait for this to get down to the bottom, what you'll see is when it does get to the bottom, it beeps at you, it tells you that it's reached its home, and then it lifts up and settles right back down and stops. So here you go, you can see it's loose, the arm moves, the plate doesn't, it lifts up a little bit, goes right back down, and indicates it's at its home position. Now at this point, you will take and just apply some pressure to the build plate to hold it while you tighten up the screws in an X pattern. Always tighten them up in an X pattern. All right, now that I've got the phone in a better position to use both hands, I'm going to start tightening these screws. Please excuse the autofocus on my phone. I'm going to start with the back right screw. We're going to tighten that one down while keeping pressure on the build plate. Now that I've done the back right, I will move over to the front left. Like I said, we're going to do this in an X pattern to evenly put tension on these screws. And then we're going to go, after we get this front left tightened up, we're going to move over to the front right. Get the front right tightened up. All right, one more touch. And boom, front right tightened up. And we're going to go to the back left screw. So you don't need to adjust any of the screws that hold, we'll say the fingers to the build plate. Just the ones to the arm. Now you can see I've got some, it's kind of loose all the way around at all 4 corners. This is why I do the 2 sheets, then confirm with 3 sheet method. So this is 2 sheets, everything's a little loose. We're going to say that we're done. So we're going to tell it that we're done, and it will lift up. And that indicates that now everything's done. The printer is calibrated. So I go a step further and I put a 3rd sheet of paper onto the printer and I run the calibration again. But this time I do not loosen up the screws on the build plate. I simply run it so it goes all the way back down, and I can confirm that with 3 sheets I have good tension all the way around with nothing loose. That's what's worked for me on the Mini 8Ks. Being that this printer is so similar, I'm going to assume it's going to do the same thing here. So I'm just doing everything that I've done with the Mini 8K, I'm applying that to this Mini 8Ks. So we're going to run the Z calibration again. Like I said, this time we're not going to loosen up any of the screws with the 3 sheets of paper. We are just running it to the home position and confirming that it holds all 3 sheets nice and tightly. Now you can see the little light from the home position, and there's that grease that's on that Z rail getting pushed down to the bottom just from the first calibration that we did. So as you use the printer, it does move the grease, and kind of distributes it over the arm and the screw, or the rail and the screw. All right, so it reached home. It's going to go back down and tighten up fully. And we're at the home position. So let's check tension, make sure everything looks good and tight. Tight on that corner. Tight on that corner. Tight on this corner. And lastly, tight there. Awesome. So we are done. This thing, I do believe, is ready for printing. So we will install the vat, put some resin in the vat, and run a print. So as I had mentioned on the mini 8K printers, I was having issues with the build plate not being perfectly level left to right. This side over here was a little bit higher than the side over here. So that was when I was using the 3 sheets to do my calibration. And I would have models start to fall off of the left-hand side or right side as you're facing it. So I moved to 2 sheets of paper and then confirming with 3, and that's what had fixed it. So that's why I did that with this printer. Everything looks good to go. So let's go ahead and see if we can't run a print and see what this printer is capable of. We're going to take our vat. We're going to go ahead and peel the protective film from the factory off of the vat. Now listen. There you go. If you heard that that tone of the tight FEP, that's what you want to hear. So when you're replacing your FEP, you want to have that tone, that dong, kind of a drum tone to it. It's been very easy to install FEP on these. Nothing fancy that you have to do. Pretty much straightforward. And when you put the screws in for the vat, I recommend putting them in loosely, one at a time. Do one loosely, then do the other one loosely. Do not tighten one down first. There you go. Now we've tightened them up and secured the vat. But if you put one in and you tighten it all the way down, I've noticed on the Mini 8K, it shifts the vat and then you can't get the second screw in. So put those screws in loosely, make sure they get threaded in, then tighten them down. I like to remove the build plate, push it back, make sure it's fully locked and back, and then lock down your top knob. So now we are ready to print once we add some resin to our vat. You see there's a max line for a max fill. Don't go above that line because as the bed gets down in there, it will raise the level and you don't want resin overflowing your vat. So just fill to the max line or just put in as much as you think as you're going to need. I recommend starting with the max line just so you don't short yourself depending on how big your model is. Most models in this, unless you're filling up the build plate and the build volume, you're probably not going to use all of the resin that's when it's filled up to the max line. But I'd always start at the max line just to see. So through testing, I'm going to run some big models on this and test the stability of that single rail axis back there. All right, so we're going to take the USB, which has our file on it. We're going to pop it in the side over here. There's a little red light, tells me the USB has got power. Go to 3D print. What? You kidding me? No data. I've got a USB. What's going on here? Okay, nothing in settings that can help me out. This is very basic. The tools are the same as Mini 8K. Nothing here to help me with this, with what's going on with the USB. But it's not reading the file that I have on here. Now I have a file that is in a CTB format, which is what the Mini 8K uses at this point. So just to confirm it's not my USB, I'm going to take my Cruiser blade from my Mini 8K, which does have files on it. We're going to pop that in and see if it reads that one. Same thing. So it's not the USB. I know this is a good working USB. I was just printing on it. So there's something else going on as to why this printer is not reading the USB. Now at this point, now that I am going through and putting this video together, I already know what the problem is. I didn't at this time. It is the file type. Phrozen uses a new file type for this machine. They are using a .prz, which is a proprietary file type from Phrozen. Like I said, the models that are on this USB in the video, they are in the CTB file format. So I'm going to shut this thing off at this point. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to see, I'm suspecting that there's probably a cable on the USB that's come disconnected from the motherboard. Um, let's open it up and see what the inside looks like. If there's anything that tells me why I'm having USB issues, which I now know what the issue is. So opening it up, very simple. We're going to take our included Allen wrenches and we're going to remove the bolts at the feet. So these 4 bolts are the only thing that is holding the bottom onto the unit. So you don't have to touch any of those other Allen wrenches or Allen hex bolts down there. Just these 4 at the feet, which makes it really easy to get inside the printer and correct anything that needs to be corrected, or replace a screen or light source, or to do any type of internal maintenance on it. Which my Phrozen products have been fantastic since I've had them. And I haven't had to do any major maintenance on them. So it's nice that they make it easy when you have to do maintenance. But I found that Phrozen just makes a really good product in general. I've had a lot of luck with them. And like I said, haven't had to do any of this maintenance on any of them. This was the first that I was like, I figured, oh my gosh, I finally got it done. There's a problem here. Come to find out, it's a new printer, and I didn't quite have all the information going into this that I needed. But anyway, so there's our light source. It looks just the same, very similar to the Mini 8K. It does have some more LED diodes in that main diode there. There it is. There's a better view of it looking at the mirror, but it does do this. It treats light the same way that the Mini 8K treated it. Ooh, there is a new board. This says Phrozen on it, not Tissue Box. So that right there, there's our USB, and that's now hardwired or installed directly to the board. There's no wires like there is on the Mini 8K. There's a ribbon. There is the motor for the Z screw and the ribbon cable for the screen. So there's the screen up there inside that little light directing tunnel. Everything is very simple inside here on these 3D printers. It's very basic. Just you've got a light source, you've got a motherboard, a screen, a motor. Nothing too overly complicated. So when you have to get in here to repair things, it should be pretty straightforward. I do like that about these 3D printers. There's a chipset for the light source. As you can see, there's a mirror there that reflects the light up to the screen, giving the light travel a longer distance, give it more time to kind of straighten itself out and provide a nice even lighting to the screen. So like I said, this is a Phrozen board. This is a new board for this printer. There was anti-aliasing issues with the Mini 8K, having issues applying anti-aliasing to one axis. Between the X and the Y, it would apply it to the X but not the Y axis. I suspect that this main board and their new PRZ format have probably fixed that issue, because the issue is confirmed fixed. Once again, there's the USB drive. At this point, I think that there's a problem with the port on here, which is totally not the case. It's hard soldered to the board. There's a ribbon cable there. That is not for the screen. It's your screen with a polarizing film on it. That small white ribbon cable, I'm not 100% sure as to where that one goes at this point in time. I'm sure I could figure it out, but there's no need to. All right, so now that I've figured out the whole formatting issue, we are printing. And look at how quick this thing is. Layer 1, done. Lift, retract, next layer. Bam. So loving that this thing is now working. It's actually a pretty quick little printer, it seems. Very happy to see this. So let's take a look and see what has printed and what kind of prints we're getting from this machine. Here go the printers. Look at them go. I've got the build volume test running on the 8KS, and my 8K is just running one of my normal prints that I run. So this is the 8K, the build volume test. You can see it cut off the tips of his staff. This model is from Flesh of Gods, from their Mork Board special release, and everything looks beautiful. This is also from them, but a little bit smaller now. You can see some lines in it. Those were from my weak supports that I did, not from the printer itself. Next up, ran this guy. This is 100% print from Flesh of Gods. We're looking at the AA on this. It actually printed out really, really good. There's a couple of spots where I can still see the voxel lines. I'm going to have to go back in and tighten up my AA settings. This is printed with the Aqua Gray 8K, not my Onyx mix that I normally print with and that I built my AA settings off of. There you can see zoomed in, there are some voxel lines there on his head, his belly. Those where it's most apparent. So we'll see if we can tighten those up. This is a test file from Phrozen, the next smaller print down. This was my smallest at the time to see what this printer could do. And he came out really good. There's no AA applied on this guy, but I was told I could go smaller. So here it is, 5 millimeters, my smallest print ever. I will not print any more of those. That is just way too small for me to have any practical use out of. But this printer did it. This print is done at 10 micron layers. Absolutely astonished that a print like this could be done on these printers. It's just absolutely amazing. But screw that. I was using tweezers to remove all the supports off of him, and very careful. I ended up breaking his staff during handling. It's just ridiculously small, but this printer handled it. Very thankful for Phrozen for letting me test out their Mini 8K printer, or their Mini 8KS rather. It is a fantastic printer. I am just astonished at the bang for the buck with this printer. Lots of value with this printer. I sure wish this was around when I got into this, as I believe that this is actually probably even better than the Mini 8K. I love the dual rails on the Mini 8K, but from my testing, the 8KS is printing just as good, if not better, because they fixed the AA, than the Mini 8K itself. So I have no downfall, no drawback to why you should purchase a Mini 8K over a Mini 8KS. I would get the S. In fact, when my Mini 8K screens decide to finally reach the end of their lifespan, I'll probably just buy a Mini 8KS rather than getting a Mini 8K screen and installing that into my Mini 8K printer. The S is a fantastic value for what it is. Really blows me out of the water. I am so impressed by the price for the value of what you get. That's what astonishes me. Phrozen has done a fantastic job sharpening the pencil, if you will, in their engineering of this printer. And they've gotten this down to a price point that is just great for an entry level user that wants to get into printing high quality models, as well as anybody else that's printing smaller models that can use the small bed of the 8KS, which I gotta say, that's probably the biggest drawback to these Mini 8K printers is their small bed size. I can normally pack about 6 to 8, depending on the specific models of the 25 millimeter based figures that I print. I can get about 6 to 8 of them on a bed of one of these beds. When it gets into like the 50 millimeter based models, I am generally getting 2 of those. The 75 millimeter beds, I'm lucky to get 1 of those, or 75 millimeter models, I'm lucky to get 1 of those onto a bed. When it gets into a 100 millimeter based model, I'm lucky just to fit pieces of that model onto the Mini 8K and Mini 8KS beds. So, depending on the size of your model, that's really going to justify which printer you look at getting. But if you're going to be printing small models and you don't need the extra real estate of a larger bed, the Mini 8KS by far is a hands down for me winner. 22 microns on your XY axis, which is phenomenal detail. I always print at 20 micron layers unless I'm testing super small 5 millimeter tall miniature models. Then I go down to 10. Because 10 just takes too long right now. Hopefully in the future, they'll be able to speed up the printing process and we'll be able to do 10 micron layers just as quickly as we can do 20 micron layers, which don't get me wrong, 20 micron layers still takes quite a bit of time. On my normal average bed of 25 millimeter based models, those at 20 micron layers, they generally take about 15, 16 hours or so, just depending on which specific models are on there and how tall they are. when I get into printing some of the bigger models from Flesh of Gods, uh, I mean, I have prints that guys sometimes run 40, 48 hours at 20 microns. Now, the detail I get is phenomenal, but it does take time at 20 micron layers. I see a lot of people print 30 micron layers. Max's Magnificent Minis does fantastic work. He prints generally at 30 micron layers. I'm more of a perfectionist. I want the 20 micron. I've gone under magnification. I've compared 10, 20, and 50. I haven't gone to 30. I don't have any interest to look at 30 because I love what 20 gives me. And I am perfectly fine with the print times at 20. I don't need the little bit less print time that I would get from 30 micron layers. 20 is my bread and butter. I prefer to print cubic pixels, if you will. So a 22 micron XY and a 20 micron Z axis is my wheelhouse. That's my go-to. I've now, started playing with the AA, which I was very opposed to that. I still kind of am reserved for the use of AA because what AA does is it blurs the image. At 22 microns, you're still retaining details. Under heavy magnification, the blur can be seen. There are some things you can do to kind of help counter the blurring and retain some of that fine detail, but nevertheless, the blur is there, the fine detail is lost. If you want the ultimate detail, cleanest, sharpest detail you can get, we need smaller pixels. We need to use more pixels to print these objects. So we need to be looking at 10 micron XY and a 10 micron Z axis to really get the sharpness without having to use AA, anti-aliasing, to blur the layer images, thus blurring the details of the print. Like I said, to the naked eye, it's very, very, very hard to tell that it is softened or blurred from AA. Extremely hard to tell. Under magnification, yes, you can tell. Yes, it is there. So I am reserved in the use of AA, even though I do use it now to help soften up my pictures. That's kind of where it is for me. And to the naked eye, it's not that big of a deal unless you're under the right lighting when printing at 20 micron layers. At 50 micron layers, to the naked eye, I can see that the voxel lines. That's why I don't print at 50 micron layers. I print at 20. So I am using AA. I don't really like it so much because to me, being more of a perfectionist or purist, it is not the absolute best detail. For what we are working with and what is available to us as consumers in the 3D printing market, 20 microns is right now kind of the pinnacle. I know there are guys that are printing in 10 micron layers. I have done it too. I don't have the time to wait for that type of a print. And it does look better to the naked eye. I could see the detail, the crispness in the detail, printing at 10 micron layers. It's there. I don't care what anybody says about, oh, the science, this UV light travels this far. Yeah. All that applies. But ultimately, in the end, to the naked eye, side by side, I can see a difference in a 10 micron layer print versus a 20 micron layer print in sharpness and details to the naked eye, not under magnification, to the naked eye. So you can take your damn science and oh, light travels this far, anything less than 50 microns, and you can throw that out the window. It is there. I can see it with my naked eye. So that's what I'm saying, guys. The smaller pixels we get, the more detail we will have. AA is great. AA is fantastic for softening up the image and helping control the voxel lines. Ultimately, AA blurs the image. So, find what works best for you for whatever you're doing. Test it out, play with it. That's the whole fun in 3D printing is testing and finding new ways and new methods to come up with the best print that we possibly can. So once again, shout out to Phrozen. Thank you for the opportunity to take a look at this printer, to review it, to put it through the paces. You guys have done a fantastic job. Thanks too for the community on Facebook and on Discord. The community's there, the Phrozen 3D printer group, as well as they have other groups dedicated more to the specific models, the minis, the mighties, the megas. These communities have just been absolutely fantastic and critical into my growth and experience with 3D printing. So I can't say enough appreciation for the groups that Frozen runs. The communities have been absolutely fantastic and very, very helpful. You might get, you get a few bad apples in the bunch. It happens. We're all human. It's just the beauty of life. But these groups and ultimately these communities are super helpful. Like I said, you're going to have to do your own research. You're going to have to do your own testing and see what works best for you. But when you get stuck and you absolutely can't figure it out, go to the community. We're here to help you. We ultimately, I want everybody to be printing as best as they can. And it's helped me. I'm sure it will help you too. Another big shout out to Flesh of Gods. Those are the models that I print the most of. Probably 98, 99% of my prints are Flesh of Gods models. I love what they do. They make their models specifically for tabletop gaming. They do come with their monsters, come with stack cards that are set up for the Dungeons and Dragons 5e system. And it's just absolutely fantastic. That's what I do it for. That's why I 3D print. That's why I paint. It's for my Dungeons and Dragons game. And Flesh of Gods is just, I love their work. I love their stats. My games are played with all of their models. My players love it. I love it. What a fantastic Patreon to support that team of model makers. And it's just absolutely fantastic. I couldn't be happier. Their community too on Discord is extremely helpful. We have a great time there. Everybody is very positive. We all help each other out as far as painting and printing. It's just been great. I have been so happy with these communities that I've come across here in my journey of 3D printing, painting, and playing Dungeons and Dragons. So that's going to wrap up my review. I hope you found some useful information here. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, either on my page, War King Miniatures. You can find me in the groups under Luther Caudle. I'm in the Frozen 3D groups. I'd be happy to help any way possible. You could even shoot me a private message. Hopefully I'll see it because I know it's going to go into my spam folder, if you will, which I do check that periodically. But, hit me up in a group, in one of the groups, or, subscribe to Flesh of Gods, get in their Discord if you're ready to print and you want some of their models. I am on their Discord. I'm very active there under War King Miniatures. You can find me on Discord. There you go, War King Miniatures. That's kind of the name that I'm under. So please reach out to me if you got any questions. If you'd like to have any, want to see anything printed on this 8KS, reach out to me. I'm here to help. Thanks a lot, everybody, for watching. Have a great day. See you around.